Hello friend, in this film I will be showing you how to make this. This is a penny loafers, and away from the regular penny loafers, it was not thread weaved, it was leather weaved all around. So this unique weaving is what I will be showing you. I'll be showing you how I do this unique weaving, how I use hand to couple it all round. This was made in the workshop in here, Lagos, Nigeria, and how I make it is what I will be simplifying for you right in here. First time, consider subscribing so you can have access to my subsequent upload. So let's come with me to see the making of this step by step. Welcome in here right now. I will be showing you how I will be making this out. Earlier I've draw the pattern out, and then the pattern is already available. The pattern of this project we're both doing is already available for you to have a full understanding about the pattern of a section pattern of this project which I've done, which you see how the pattern was made from A to Z. Okay, so for you that you've not seen that, I'll recommend you watch, because I have the link in the description of this video. Just go in there, click it, the part 1 of this project, and you can also see it in the end screen of this tutorial. So what you do is that the first phase we get is that I have to use the pattern. It is very important to achieve the pattern out. After we've achieved the pattern, I'm using this pattern to cut this leather out. The leather I will be using for this project to form all this this leather out is a 2 mm in thickness, sorry, 1.8 in thickness. The thickness of this leather is 1.8. It's relatively thick and dry leather, and I just use the pattern to cut it all around. This project will be lined with another lining, okay, a leather lining. I need to line the surface. I can do this project without lining in the inner, but looking at the project that was showed during the introduction, it has another color of inner, so it was the leather of the inner that shows up in here. So the leather of the inner I'm using here is 1 mm in thickness. The lining I'm using is 1 mm in thickness of leather. So what I do is, at the point I've drew or mark all my pattern on the leather which I'm using, I then glue it directly on the lining. Yes, I glue it up. I've not pieces cut everything out. I glue it first. The reason I need to glue it first is that it's more easier when I glue everything together first, then later I then start cutting it out one after the other, instead of me cutting it out one after that and then start gluing it. No, to glue everything once is more easier and more convenient. So before I didn't even cut out the portion that needs to be perforated, which is needed to be weaved. It's very important to get to perforate it all out first. Yeah, the reason it's very important I need to perforate all these out now is that if I cut out before I perforate, and then need they might not be so even at the edge. It might the cutting might not be so even. So when I perforate, and around the process of me perforating, my hand is not so balanced, so straight. When I'm cutting it out, I'm trying to correct it a bit. So that is the reason why I perforate all the holes which is necessary, which is meant for the weaving. I perforated it before cutting it. So at the time I'm cutting that now, I'll be conscious of the gap, distance between the hole and where I'm cutting. You can see I have to do it gently, carefully do it, carefully dice my scissors down, dive it down to a point that I have equal spaces around that. So I cut this out now, and the time I have this, I'm good to go with all that. And then there's a portion of this leather which is not necessary. I lined, which is the tape. The tape needs to be very, very flexible because it needs to go all around. So those portions that which I don't need to line, which does not require lining, I go in there, and what I do is that I then just need to open it up. Despite the fact I've glued everything, you can see that these foldings are in between. They are all in between the old leather altogether. So I come pick it up and then open the lining to make the leather to be a bit flexible again. And the penny too, the penny does not require any lining, so I picked that up and then remove the lining. So at the time I was gluing together, I didn't mount a lot of pressure on it. The reason I didn't mount lot of pressure on it is because I still need to open some parts out. That's why I didn't get to mount a lot of pressure on it. Okay, so at the time I open that, cut it all around together. The next thing is then proceed to the sewing machine. First, I have to fix all the upper to know, yes, if everything is balanced. Definitely trust me, it is balanced. Everything arranged very, very well. When you are cutting, make sure you cut with a very, very sharp scissors. So after I've balanced it, I know that it's balancing. Check the holes is balanced. The puff, the tongue and the penny balancing, and then move to the sewing machine to join all these together. You can see all my patterns ready. So joining it, I will be using post bed sewing machine. The post bed sewing machine is this kind of sewing machine that gives you a lot of space. I strongly recommend this for shoe. For those that works on shoes a lot, I recommend this post bed. So this is not just a regular post bed machine. This is an heavy duty post bed sewing machine. The reason I tend to use this, going down looking down the image, I have other post bed in the workshop in there, but that is not an heavy duty. The reason I'm using the heavy duty is that I have a 1.8 mm in thickness of leather. I have a lining of 1.2 mm. Altogether is going about 3 mm, and I'm putting all together, stitching it upon each other. The leathers dropping on each other. I'm stitching something around 5 mm to 4 mm in thickness together. So the heavy duty machine is the best to do this. So I have to use that. That's why I use that. So if you don't have that in your factory and then in your workshop, you have a straight bed, an heavy duty straight bed, that one too can do justice to it. But for me, I strongly recommend the post bed heavy duty machine to do this. Okay, so at the time I've done this, I first work on the tape. I cover the back, I join the back together. After joining the back, I've joined the tape, I cover the back, covering the back. I then need now to then come and stitch the tape to drop on it. The stitching we're doing on this is not so much. After I've joined the back, I cover the back and then join the tape all around. The tape, dropping the tape all around it, need a bit of glue, which I'm applying right now. I just need to apply some glue on it so it can hold very well, because it needs to be very, very firm and so accurate when I'm stitching. And one thing this sewing machine does to you is that, another thing it does is it helps you see whatever you're sewing. It's so visible at any time you stitch whatever you stitch very, very straight. You don't get to, if you do an imaginary stitching, you see whatever you're stitching. So that is why I so much like this stitching sewing machine very well. So at the time I've applied gum, the vapor goes off, and then need to then come and drop it on it. I dropped it on it and then come back to the machine. Virtually everything I need to do on this project about sewing, I do it once I went to the machine. Once I go on the machine, I just did everything once. Everything after now is gonna be hand weaved all around. So what I did is that where the portion at which I've applied, I drop it carefully. And the one thing I have to be very careful with it is that this band is not straight. There's a design, a kind of curve, design all around in there. So I have to be conscious of that and make sure it's balanced and it laps very, very well. Okay, after it laps very, very well, I then need to stitch all around those curves. That is, I'm stitching now around those curves. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm stitching around those curves. Now, as I said, the sewing machine is going to help in the sense that it will let you see everything you're sewing once. Your flatbed will not do this as much as the post bed will do it. So I strongly recommend you use this post bed. And if you're not comfortable with the The speed, I strongly recommend you control the speed, reduce the speed to a point at which you will definitely be able to control it. Okay, now I'm done with the sewing of this, and now get to the point at which is now left for me to use the hand weaved project to unweave all this all round. So unweaving all this round is what is next. What I did is I cut a straight, same leather which I used for this project, which is 1.8 mm in thickness, is what I cut straight. I cut it up to 40 inches. That's what I'm using to weave this all round. I'm weaving it, and remember when it comes to the time where we're talking about the pattern, I made mention that 1.5 mm to 2 mm is punch is used to make holes on this project. So that is what we use to make holes in here. So moving forward from this, that is why the leather is able to go into it very, very well. Yes, apart from you using leather, if you are not so good with it, if you are not so sure of yourself about this, and you want to use thread weaving, yes, you can use the wax thread to also achieve this also. Okay, so moving away from this, now the next thing you then need to do now is that to now follow the line one after the other. You follow the line one after the other. During the getting of this pattern, I made mention in my previous video that the holes of the verb and the other part of it, the holes has to be equal. And you can see if you have to follow it one after the other, if the holes are not equal, the shoe is not going to be balanced. So, and even when the holes are equal, when you are now weaving, you have to be so careful for you not to skip some holes. Once you skip a hole in there, will not make the project balanced. So we have to follow it one after the other. It is the leather, you're working with leather, and you have to tight it, do it very, very firm. Note this, I weaved the penny with the shoe once. I didn't wait till I finished before adding the penny. I weaved everything on it once all round. So that is just it. Once you weave it, and then you make sure and create a space at which you can end the knot somewhere. Ending the knot somewhere, and where is the place you need to end the knot must be inner of the shoe, so it's the ending the knot must not be visible outside. So that is just how you get your upper. So we've gotten an upper out right now. As you can see, it so it's just cut your leather, go to the machine, stitch it, and weave it. This weaving is just a bit taxing or job in here. So once you can do it, then you get your upper down. Stitching, you have to maintain your stitch. Your stitching has to be as neat as possible. So that is it. Thank you so much for watching this. So the next place we're going to now is to then start to last this, make this form to shape and size. That is the next phase we're going to right now. So I've gotten my sew upper, I've gotten my insole with shank padded up. The next thing is now to then start molding this together. This section is to mold this to size and to shape. To mold this to shape, the next thing I want to do is to first nail the inner layer, nail it to the last, and then to start arranging it now. I'll be doing this with the help of my lasting plier. This is not going to be an easy task because my leather is thick, and remember I've glued it all around together before I start sewing it, so it will be not going to be so easy for me. So, but with the help of the lasting plier, I'll woo and some nails, I will be able to do this. So I need to stretch it. At every point you need to do this, you need to stretch it, stretch your leather, make sure that your leather is sticking firm to the shoe mold. And another thing you need to consider is that the front of the weaving of the project are to be aligned with the shape of the mold. Yes, it is the mold that you use to draw this pattern. It is that same mold that you are meant to use to last this project, or else you will not be having a balanced project. Your project will not be as balanced as your sketching. So for it to be balanced as your sketching, then you have to use that same mold that which you use to draw the pattern to last. So the major place you need a lot of attention when you are lasting is the front, the tip, and the back. The tip of this project, because it's a layer upon layer, leather upon leather, it's so thick, so it's not going to be so easy lasting. So you have to take it one after, using your tip pitch of your lasting plier to drag it one after the other. I keep dragging one after the other. After I drag it, I mount pressure and use my tack nail to hold it down. Yes, there are two types of tack nail: the square tack nail and the rounded tiny tack nail. I recommend you use the tiny tack nail, tiny round tack nail, because the tiny round tack nail will not injure your leather, but the regular square nail will definitely injure it. At the time you've been able to mount pressure, last this all around, then the weaving of our shoe will then need to massage it, pound it in a way that it's going to fit firm to the last. You can see our shoe is now fitting so firm, all to the thanks of our lasting plier and the nail holding it all around together. Yes, I did a bit of some moisture wetting in here. No, I don't have an oven in the factory in here. I don't have an oven yet. The industrial oven will have might get this overburn, so I can't use that on this. So I need to moisture it a bit. The reason I moisture it a bit, so the leather can quickly form the shape now. So after I've moistured it away for some minutes, hours, like 2 hours for it to dry, then I apply adhesive to it. Remember, before I moistured it, there was no adhesive in it. I apply adhesive. So that is how you last it. You've concluded, finish lasting it. The next phase is then to apply your sole and do some finishing to it. All the link to all the finishing part of it is in the description of this video. Hope you've learned something from this video. I'd like you to like it, share, and subscribe. While you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I look forward to having you in my subsequent upload. I'm Sunday Riley. Bye for now. Hello, very welcome in here. In this video, we'll be showing you how I'll be doing so to my penny loafers. This penny loafers is a project I've been doing for a while on this channel, and I have like 3 or episode I've dropped on this. This is I'm now at the point at which I'm working on the sole. The sole is what I'll be working on. What are the materials we'll be using to work on the sole? Is a leather weight, and a rubber top heel. That's what I'll be doing. So this is the leather. The leather I'm using is a 8mm. Sorry, that is not 8mm. 6mm thickness leather. So that's what I'm using. So it's not so easy cutting it out. So I have to be the knife has to be very sharp, and while it's very sharp, I have to tactically be able to cut it so it will not get. I will not wound myself in there. So I've cut it the shape. The first thing I did, I put the sole or the last project on the leather and mark it round. So while marking it, I mark it with space. And then, so the reason I mark is that the reason I mark it with space so it can accommodate my wet round. The wet can come in different material. Comes in rubber, leather, fiber, and PU wet. The leather wet is what is always been at the edge of the shoe all round. So the one I'm using now is a rubber wet. So at the same time I apply the glue on the wet, I also apply the glue on the leather. Around the edge I apply it. After which I apply it while it's drying. I try as much as possible to nail it directly to the last. The reason I have to nail it directly to the last is that so it can hold firmly. So when I'm trying to attach my wet to it, it's not going to move off. So I try to start attaching my wet inward. Inward is when I want to start attaching my wet and start attaching it in the point that it's not going to be very visible to anybody looking wherever the shoe is on. So applying the wet, I make sure the wet is closely fitting to the last. It has to closely fit into the last. There must not be gap in there. Make it close. It should not be open, and at the same time the shoe should be sitting very well. So I'm making the mold to sit very well on the wet. Now at the time I achieve that, I remove it, and I can still get to do some balancing if when the press of me holding it around it wasn't balanced. I need to use my hand to balance it, and then cut the excess wet off. While I cut the excess wet, I cut it off and make sure the edge closes very well. Mount some bit of pressure on it because it needs to glue together very, very well. Mount some bit of pressure, and the last excess, all this little remaining at the edge, need to be trimmed out of it. So I pick my knife, and if you're doing this, I recommend a sharpenable knife to do this, because this leather is always very thick. It's not compulsory you get to use leather. You can use a rubber. You can use a rubber that's as thick as this. If you're using rubber is a bit easier to cut than leather. I'm using a real animal natural leather to get this done. So I cut it to be exact of the weight. So I had to call one of the boys in the workshop, tell me to hold it so be more easier for me to cut, which it helps me. Thank you, Ayanfe, for helping me to do that. So I've done that. Now the next thing is then come over and start arranging the heels. There are two ways at which I can arrange this. So I can either arrange it with using the English weighted sewing method, or using the extra arrange weighted method. What I'm using right now is not the English weighted method. I'm using the pre-arranged method. That is what I'm using right now. So I first arrange the heel. I have a 5 mm heel, also brace with another 6 mm leather in there. Also, no wooden in there, is leather all through is leather. So I brace with leather, brace with a rubber. The reason I have to brace with a rubber is that rubber tends to be more resistant than leather when it's hard to step on the foot. So it lasts longer. That's why I have to brace the heel with leather. With rubber, sorry, in there. So I brace it. Now the next is then brush it. We're going over, brush the portion, brush it, and then come and glue it to it. Before I glue the heel into it, I make sure that the inner part of the glue is smooth, because at the time I completely bound everything together. There will not be a way for me to do the finishing on the heels again. So I have to make the finishing once. I apply gum. After I get to apply gum, I recommend you apply this gum twice. Well, it depends on the kind of gum you use. For my kind of gum, I apply the gum twice so it can hold very, very well. You wouldn't have an issue. This is leather going on leather, so it's going to be definitely going to bound very, very. So I apply it. Now the next is to then mount a bit of pressure all around it. Mount the pressure all around it. So that is it. The essence of the pressure is to for click together permanently. Click together. If you want to use a tacking gun, you can use a tacking gun, a tacking nail to nail this thing, tack it together. But I prefer to tack my nail at the end of the project all around. So I didn't tack any nail now. I fast forward my tacking of the nail till when I'm done. I'm about doing the finishing. So now I go to the machine. I've brushed the edges all around. I was just using knife to cut it. It wasn't smoothing. So I went to the bench grinder to smooth it in, to cut it all around. Smoothing it, balance it. After I balance it, it's now smooth. Next is then go and use the saw to mark the portion where I need to apply the gum. So now it's time to apply the gum to the two sides of it. So I now pick the sole and pick the upper, mark it around, go to the bench grinder. So sorry I didn't show you where I went to the bench grinder for you to see how I brushed this. I brushed it, and at the time I brushed it, I then used a PU marker to pat the center, the portion at which the valley that is in the center. I use this to patch it all around together. Instead of me, the original material which I should have used is the shoe cork that I should have used to patch it, but shoe cork is not available in Nigeria, so I have to use this PU material to just patch it. After I patch it, I then need to go to the bench grinder again to then brush it for it to be balanced very, very well. I don't want an issue when I finish the shoe and the shoe will now start having a valley in between. So I pat it to everything to be balanced. Remember, when I'm putting my this particular project, there is shoe shank. Shoe shank has already been installed in the insole of this shoe. So at the time I've padded, the next thing is then come to apply, come to glue this upper and the sole, come to glue it together. At this point, you're gluing, you have to be very careful. You don't need to exceed the point at which we've marked earlier that we've brushed. And in time of the sole, you have to apply the gum all around the edges. Make sure that the gum is evenly applied. So once you ensure that it's evenly applied, you have a perfect bounding. So we apply all that all around and then come together and then apply to the sole again. Now when it comes to, you leave it for the time, depending on the time of the kind of gum you are using, that's when the time that you're using leaving that. But for me, at average of 20 minutes is okay for me to leave the gum for it to dry, for the vapor to go off. Then I then come back to glue it all round together. So to glue this all round together, I will be starting from the back. I'll be starting to glue this from the back. The reason I need to start to glue this from the back is that it's very, very important to glue from the back, so you definitely know what you are looking forward to. What you are looking forward to in the sense that whenever there's an excess, you know how to control it before you get to the front. Well bound. Now, mounting pressure, your pressure has to be evenly mounted all around. The reason I had to add the layer on that is that so I wouldn't want the hammer pressure to show on my sole. Okay, after I've successfully mount pressure on it, the next thing I have to do now is that our shoe is standing very, very fine. It's balanced, glued around. Then I need to pick my organic dye to now cover the portion that is not well covered. All the area I needed to dye, I start applying dye around it, dye it, and then now extending that to even the sole. I need to make the sole don't just look the brownish. Yes, I can leave in the brownish way it looks, but I prefer the client that requested for this wants a complete black shoe, a black sole shoe. So I need to cover it. I cover that the dye, and this is leather, so the dye is gonna go in it very, very well. It's an organic dye, so it's going in it very, very, very. So I need to cover it all before I have my wax polish to then shine this surface, to apply the shine also polish all around. So I've done this. I've applied dye. I wait for it to dry. I apply it once, apply it second, to make it come up. So what I've just done in here is to put size. What I have in here is a sizing, manual sizing thing that I bought from order online from AliExpress. Okay, so it's helped me to put the size in it. So that's for the 3 that which I've just put in it. I pressure it with heat, a bit of heat, and it's going to show on it. That is because I'm using leather. If you're using rubber, you might have difficulties in it not show. So this is what I say about me putting my nails at the end of. You can see my nails, because I have this nail putting at the back now, makes everything bound very, very, very well. As you can see, I've clipped it, and I'm going to go on the bench grinder, shine the surface, and then apply my finishing dye on it totally. So it's going to wear a new look right now. So I like this Zanoti red base, so that is why I'm using this Oxblood red organic dye on it. So I use it to cover it, make sure it covers evenly, and then this safety tips is very, very important. Hand glove is very, very important in here. That is not meant to be consumed, so I need to cover my hand. So I need to cover my hands with the hand glove, so it will not go into my nails. At the time I dyed it finish with an Oxblood red with black, I then need to cover it with a polish. So polish it to make it glow. So that is just it. I polish it around and then prepare the inner. After polishing it around, making it balance, is balanced, shine it, and make the inner for it. Thank you so much for watching to this time. Hope you like what you've seen. It's so easy. Inner, now I need to attach the inner to it. I have my weave on label attached to it and put it in it straight. Shine it is now looking very, very wonderful. You can see that. Yes, it is so easy to make this. Hope you've learned something from this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. While you subscribe, hit on the notification bell for you to be notified when I have awesome videos like this again on my platform. I'm Oyewale Sunday, and I look forward to have you in my subsequent upload.